And so the groove was playing, and I had a banjo there, and this kind of this riff just kept coming. I sound like I'm at Guitar Center. Hello, Guitar Center, can we help you?
Every time I feel like I just can't take it no more, I get angry. That's when I start running. This tumbleweed, I believe we've come a long way since we were strangers in the base.
Hi, this is Chris Willman with Variety. I'd like to welcome you to Variety's first episode of Soundboard. You may know us at Variety for some of our other video interview franchises like the Streaming Room or the Variety After Show. We've never had the Variety After album, so we're going to start bringing you video interviews with some of music's top creators in the form of the Soundboard series. And we couldn't have found a better person to help us inaugurate it than Keith Urban, whom we all recognize as a music superstar, and many of us recognize as a music mensch and a fairly beloved figure in the industry for about 20 years now. Keith has a new album just out called The Speed of Now, Part 1, his 11th album. Thank you for joining us, Keith, and for helping us kick off this new series.
Thanks, Chris.
There are 15 tracks on this album. It's pretty loaded, so are you sure you didn't just go ahead and put Part 2 on there while you were at it? Because it seems like you might not have anything left over.
No, Part 2 came about because I actually recorded probably over 30 songs, and quite a few of those I really was struggling with how to not including them in this record, but I just wanted to put together a cohesive album firstly, and landed on these particular 14, 15-ish songs. There's a couple of bonus tracks on there, and other ones I just realized these probably should be on a Part 2, and that's how Part 2 really came about. It was just simply over recording and really wanting those songs to be heard as well.
Were you thinking of them in terms of different moods and different kinds of statements that they would make, that you were thinking, okay, this is a great song, but it's got to be on a different collection than this one?
Some of these songs can sit around for a long time waiting for the right record. There's a track on this album called Better Than I Am that I wrote with a guy from England called Egg White. He's an incredible songwriter, musician. And we wrote it in 2015. It was actually intended for the Ripcord album, but I didn't feel that it thematically or emotionally fit that record. So I was then going to put it on the next one, which was Graffiti You, but I still felt it wasn't quite right for that record. And 5 years later, I was putting the songs together for the Speed of Now, and it seemed like the perfect closing song. So technically for me, this is the song that closes the record, but it had to wait 3 albums for it to find a home.
People have gotten a little bit used to expecting the unexpected from you, to the point where you've got on the very first track, Breland, and you've got now Rogers, this really urgent, insistent rhythm, and you got the banjo mixed in there.
I like presenting a fusion that I like, and I find it. At the end of the day, it's just art, isn't it? You know, it's an artistic expression in the form of music, and I'm interested in sounds that go together, not just genres. I don't really think in terms of genre. I think in terms of sonics, that I'm interested in seeing if they can find a way to blend together and create something that I really like. And I like energy coming out of the gate, right out of the gate. I think every one of my albums starts with an up-tempo song, every one of them. In a lot of cases, programming too always factors into it. Right from my first solo album in 1999, the very first song on that album is called It's a Love Thing. And it opens with a drum machine and acoustic guitar. Like, I don't have an acoustic, but it's like a and it's just an instant groove right out of the gate. No drums, just drum machine and acoustic. So I've always been drawn to rhythm, and particularly machinery rhythm, and how machines work with humans. It's probably, that's the thing that's at the center of everything I do, is when machinery and humans work together. And that's mostly because I grew up playing guitar with drum machines, you know, in my bedroom, and playing solo gigs at pubs and clubs with a little drum machine. And I've just always worked with drum machines. So as a player, I'm very comfortable in that world with a human and a machine playing together.
Yeah, that's interesting. Nile Rodgers, clearly not a machine, and you've got
Oh, he
Breland.
is.
Different kind of machine. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the thought in bringing him in? And I know there's sort of like a story about a moment where you showed up with the banjo, and maybe that wasn't what he was expecting to be drawn into.
Yeah, that was in 2016, somewhere around there. I was working on the Ripcord album. You know, the banjo is a very funky instrument for me, a six-string banjo, which I've been playing since 1995 on all of my records. Again, it's the texture, not the technique, that I'm interested in. When I was working on an album with my band called The Ranch back in 1995, there was a song I wanted banjo on, and a banjo player came into the studio, and he wasn't playing the part that I heard in my head, and he would keep trying to pass the banjo to me, and it's a 5-string banjo. I'm like, I don't know how to play a 5-string banjo. There's four pegs down here and one halfway up the neck, and was like, I don't know what this thing is, you know. So I couldn't play it, and I was so frustrated because in my head I had a fully realized banjo part, but I couldn't tell him how to play it. So he left the session, and I drove home, and I was like, man, I wish they made banjos with 6 strings tuned like a guitar, because then I'd know what to do. And I went to this music store called Corner Music. Crazy. Literally that afternoon, just went in there. I walked in the door, and on this stand, as soon as I walked in, I saw this banjo, and I looked up the top of the head here, and it had 6 tuning pegs, and I was like, no way, you know. So I went over and picked it up and played it, and I'm like, ta-da, daddy's home. Bought it, went back to the studio, put it on the track, and it was like, it just locked into the band, to my guitar playing, everything. And then we put it on like half that album, and that just became part of the sound of what I do a lot of the time. I don't do it to make it country. I do it because I like the sound of the texture in that world, particularly with programming. So with Niall and his rhythm playing, I went, if I could get in a studio with Niall and he plays his rhythm the way he does, I think I could jam along on my banjo and they would do this. I really believe it, and with all my heart. So I just sought him out like a stalker, and eventually got to meet him. And we went to New York. We were in New York, and we went to a studio, and he showed up with his Strat, and I showed up with my 6-string banjo. And he put on this funky kind of loopy groove, and he started playing, and I started jamming on the banjo, and it just locked in. It was crazy. And we jammed for hours. It was so fun.
When you're writing, do you often start with a riff?
Sometimes, yeah, it depends on the song, but a lot, yeah, there's a lot of songs for me do start with riffs. Out the Cage was, which is the opening track, was an idea I brought to my writers who are actually working with me now, Breland and Sean Small and Sam Sumser. The 4 of us got together to write, and we'd written a couple of songs, including Soul Food, which is on the record. And the last day we were together, I brought them this sort of English drum beat loop groove that I really liked, sort of in the vein of like Prodigy or Fatboy Slim. And I always loved that kind of frenetic energy that makes me either want to break something or miss my exit on the freeway or something. But it just really sort of excites me. And I always wanted to figure out how to bring that into my world. And so the groove was playing, and I had a banjo there, and this kind of this riff just kept coming. I sound like I'm at Guitar Center. Hello, Guitar Center, can we help you? This riff just kept coming over and over, and it's kind of over the groove, was intoxicating. And Breland said, it'd be good if we sang something over that. So the never feel like I just can't think no more. I get angry. Started happening, and the song just sort of took off. And we were sick of being in quarantine, and we were sick of being in lockdown, and we were just sick of being confined. And it was a lot of things going on everywhere. Not only that was happening all over the world, and people were going through that in their own way, that sense of confinement, but also Black Lives Matter was happening, and protests were happening all over the world. And there was all sorts of situations of human confinement that people just wanted to be liberated from and break out of. And it was just very apparent that that's what that song wanted to be. So Out the Cage just became a song about liberation from confinement, whether that's even a dead-end job. We wanted to make, for me, it was about giving a song to people who are in any situation where they're stuck, whether that's a crap job or an unfulfilled relationship or a negativity that they're in, or just a life that's unfulfilled in any way, oppression of any sort, and a song that can help you sort of get out of that, even if it's only in your mind. It's that's where everything starts.
While we're talking about collaborations on this record, Pink is just a thrilling vocalist. Was she somebody that you had thought of just in terms of her vocal presence as somebody you want to do something with?
Oh, for years, yeah. I'm just a huge fan of the depth of her artistry. There's a lot of great singers, you know, people have great voices. They know how to use their voice really well, but she's one of those rare artists who can tell the story when she sings, really tell the story. And I feel it. And it doesn't matter whether it's like Get This Party Started or something from The Greatest Showman, the complete opposite ends of things. I always feel her humanity in her voice, all the strength, fragility, rawness, courage, swagger, all the colors of humanity. I always feel that when she sings. So I was so hoping she would love this song, and was thrilled when she said yes.
In this bar, just sat here staring at my phone.
The groove of the song, was there anything you were kind of going for with that?
It was already written, and it had a good kind of lilt to it, that kind of
I didn't want to fight. I swear that I was trying. Yeah.
It's a universal thing where it doesn't really, I can't label what the song is. It's not country, it's not any particular genre. It's just a good song. It's just a good song about a very sort of universal experience and situation. So I'm so glad people are reacting to it the way they are.
I was expecting like fewer songs about driving fast.
I can feel it flying like a hand out the window in the wind. The cars go by.
And in a way, I felt like there's, you know, if anything, almost more of that. But it's not in spite of quarantine. It's because of quarantine somehow that you may have gravitated to certain things having to do with liberation or wanting to bust loose.
Yeah, I'm much more interested in the thing that will pull me out of this situation than the situation a lot of the time. I think I'm more interested in that. I'm more driven by that. And, you know, call it hope, call it whatever you want to call it. But that thing, I like that something is pulling me forward, always pulling me forward. And that gives me a sense of vitality, life, energy, purpose, curiosity, everything, as long as I'm being pulled forward, always forward. That's probably why I listen to new music more than old music. I'm constantly listening to everything that's coming out on the streaming platforms, and I have lots of people that hit me to new artists, new bands, new songs, new everything, because that's where that's where I'm most interested. I'm most interested in going forward. So when I was writing these songs, it was about, okay, well, how do we move forward from this? I don't want to really, not that interested in a song about the doldrums of isolating and that. I'd like a song to go, F these doldrums, F this isolation, F 2020, to quote the other song that's just so good. Pull me forward, pull me out of this. You know, I'm drowning in this. Give me tomorrow, show me tomorrow. Somebody, please, you know.
How do you typically balance an album knowing that you do pretty much have this optimistic spirit that runs through your albums?
I don't know how. I mean, it's just a feeling of a balanced sense of who I am at this particular moment is what I'm hoping to frame on an album within those limited amount of songs I've got. I always approach an album, the final leg of it, in sequencing, figuring out what songs. I always approach it like a set list. Like, okay, I'm going to do a show. I've got 15 songs. You know, that's my little slot on the festival. And I've got to do a set list. What do I want to come out swinging with? How do I want to end? What do I want to do in the middle? And what do I want to do to join everything in between and go on a journey that's representative of who I am within a short time frame? And that's really what this album is.
I just have to ask about the driving imagery because that's in there so often.
My wife will tell you it's one of my absolute top passions. I would actually put driving right alongside guitar playing. It's something I've always loved ever since I was a kid. My father loved cars. I love cars. Love driving, like not just functionally, but just in every facet of it. I'm passionate about driving. All different kinds of vehicles, all different kinds of modes. I've got everything from a tiny little Fiat 500 to an F350 with dual wheels in the back. That's absurd. A Pagani. I have such a crazy mix of vehicles that I love to drive. So driving's featured heavily in a lot of my music because it's how I grew up, with our dad taking us on drives on a Sunday afternoon in the car. So I assimilate music, freedom, cars. They all go together. Like I record Meekum auctions and watch it like an idiot, just watching car auctions on TV in Jay Leno's garage, and I'm that guy.
But we can make a change, and we got to try to live a better world on the day that we die.
Do you think of Say Something as kind of a call to action?
Say Something was a song that got started. The first verse was written, and they sent it to me. The writers sent it to me and asked if I would want to finish it with them. And I really loved where it was going, but it was very much a singularly social conscious statement about saying something, speaking up for what you believe in, causes, beliefs, issues, passions, sort of things that you should be speaking up about, not being silent. And I thought about how I was raised by my mum and dad, and my dad was very much like he was very opposite to that. He was very, don't say anything, don't get on soapboxes, don't preach to people, just get on with your life and your work and don't rock the boat, you know. And so I thought, well, how does this song resonate with me? Because I think there are times where silence is dangerous and we need to speak up. And I'm glad a lot of that is happening around the world finally right now. It's imperative. But I also thought about the way I was raised with my dad. I was like, well, there's some truth about that too, you know, about if you live your life and every day go at the things that you believe in, you can actually do it instead of just speaking about it. But I thought we also didn't speak about intimate things in our house. So it's not just about out there in the world on your soapbox. It's also about in your intimate family, my intimate family, where we didn't really speak about things. We should have said things. There should have been things that we said. Silence wasn't good there either. So that second verse, I pivoted it to be more personal about the way I was raised and the fact that there's times too, you know, where I wished I'd said sorry to somebody before they drifted out of my life, or I love you to someone who passed away and I never got the chance. I should have said something. So for me, it wasn't just socially, it was also intimacy as well.
But I don't want to be like my father was, scared to rock the boat, never speaking up.
You know, I think a lot of musicians maybe grew up that way and find music as their outlet for learning to express themselves. And some of them get stuck in that place where, you know, they can say, I love you and everything else they need to say in a song, but it's still hard for them in their real lives.
Yes.
Was that how it worked for you? You know, having grown up with a father who maybe didn't say everything he should have, that music was kind of the way to explore that? And then was there a process after that of thinking, I need to translate this from song into the moments where there's no guitar around too?
It took marrying Nick to learn all about that. learn about how to communicate, really communicate properly and speak and say things. I could write a good love song, but I was terrible at relationships because I didn't really know. It was just wasn't my mum and dad's fault. They did a great job raising us. They just, like anybody else, you can't give away what you don't have. And I'm glad that our girls are in a very different environment where we talk about things all the time, you know. It's really important.
You've said that you were paralyzed a little bit when COVID kicked in and you were kind of near the finish line on the album, but then you sort of lost your motivation to finish it.
We were playing residencies in Vegas at the time. We were playing some festivals. So it wasn't a full sort of touring year. So I was doing sporadic shows, and then I was in the studio all the time, different studios in Nashville, going out to LA and working out there at a studio. Just always engaged in creating with people, you know, whether it's musicians, you know, engineers, writers, whatever, just in there doing it. And then suddenly it's like, well, that's stopped. There's no gigs. All the studios are closed. There's no going anywhere. You're in your house. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got to finish my album, you know. I don't know, how do I finish my album, you know? And I've got a studio at the house, but I thought, well, I can't have an engineer come to the house. No one can come here. I don't want to do things remotely. So I just sort of, I honestly just felt paralyzed. And I had this sort of naive attitude, like, I'll get my sweatpants on and sit on the couch and watch TV with the family until the whole thing blows over. You know, like, whatever. Let's just kick back and enjoy this moment, you know. And then the moment went on, and it became very apparent this is not going to blow over. This is a real thing. And after what seemed like weeks of me not doing anything, it was a little bit like my team calling me, going, how's the album coming along? I was like, not doing the album, forget the album, not gonna, you know, just an idiot. Just because I didn't know how to do it. I just didn't know how to suddenly pivot like that, like pivot immediately, do it a different way. I'm like, so I called a good friend of mine who's much older and wiser than me, who I call for advice. And I was on the phone with him for about 10 minutes. And he said, Keith, we've been on the phone about a good 10 minutes. All I've heard is everything you can't do. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm calling you. I'm just telling you all this stuff I can't do. And he's like, yeah, but what can you do? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, just name one thing that you can do. I'm like, well, I have a studio downstairs. I could go down and maybe do something down there. Okay. I could call an engineer friend of mine who I know has been isolating, and he can come over and wear the mask. And he goes, great, when are you going to do that? Right after this call. Okay, what else can you do? And within that call, he just steered me completely back into the positive place, which I know it sounds so cheesy, hallmarky, cornball, but it really was true. I was all about what I couldn't do, and there was tons of it, but I wasn't at all entertaining what I could do, no matter how small it was. But as I pivoted and went towards that, the can do stuff got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we really dived in to the studio, and I wrote new songs, and I FaceTimed with people, and I sent files to drummers who played on sessions, and I sent them to bass players, and they sent it back to my studio, and I worked in the studio, and we put on the virtual concerts from my warehouse, and I went and took part in the Global Citizen One World concert, and we did the drive-in concert, and before I knew it, it was like a whole burst of creativity that happened.
Is there any moment on this album that you're kind of most proud of?
I think what's happening is what we do live is more and more coming into the records. I think that's happening in Nashville across the board. There was a time when you used to have to make a certain kind of record. You just had to. And then you could go out and play live and do whatever you want. I mean, you look what Garth Brooks was doing in the 90s. You listen to those records, but if you went and saw him live, it's like a whole different thing live. Wild and frenetic and unbridled and unpredictable. And all we've done is just brought all of that into the studio more and more and more over the years. It's certainly been the case for me, you know, from my very first solo album in '99, which is pretty safe, pretty, you know, just very safe and intentionally is what it is. I don't make any apologies for it. And then we start touring, and then you've got Golden Road, and then you've got Be Here, and all those records just get looser and a bit wider and a bit wider and a bit wider. And they've just continued on that trajectory till I think there's no difference between the album and coming to see us live.
The Speed of Now Part 1 with Part 2 due maybe next year, do you think? Or
Yeah,
2 years,
potentially maybe late next year. I really don't know. It depends on this record and, you know, how it does. It's certainly off to an amazing start all around the world, and I've never had that happen before. So well, I think we've got a lot of songs on the record to go.
Yeah.
And then the touring, it depends on the touring as well, but possibly Part 2 late next year.